there has been a shift. The ownership class these days does tend to work, and indeed to make a fetish of its long hours. But the real change has come in the lives of those of us who don't make millions. It's become especially important that we believe that the work itself is something to love. If we recalled why we work in the first place, to pay the bills, we might wonder why we're working so much for so little. People have long considered the question of whether work should be enjoyable. In the 1800s, socialist and artisan William Morris wrote of the three hopes that might make work worth doing: hope of rest, hope of product, hope of pleasure in the work itself. Morris acknowledged that the idea of pleasurable work might seem strange to most of his readers, but argued that the inequality that capitalism had wrought meant that some who did no work lived off the labor of others who were condemned by the system to useless toil. Modern industry had taken away what little independence and power craftspeople might have had and reduced them to interchangeable, robotic wage laborers. No one cared whether the proletariat liked its work. It wasn't given a choice in the matter. But those proletarians, too, usually tried their hardest to escape work. The labor movement's earliest demands were usually for less work, shorter working hours down to 12, then 11, then 10, then 8, plus days off. The strike, the workers' best weapon, is, after all, a refusal of work. And for a while, they wielded it effectively, winning some concessions on the length of the working day and week, as well as on wages. Capitalists would give up a little here and there to keep the profits flowing, but they also sought new strategies to keep workers on track beyond simple brute force. The carrot that was eventually offered to the industrial working class was what is often called the Fordist Compromise, named, of course, after Henry Ford's Ford Motor Company. Workers would give up a large chunk of their time, but a manageable one, generally 5 8-hour days of work a week, to the boss, and in return, they would get a decent paycheck, health care either provided by the company in the United States or in other countries provided by the state, and maybe some paid holidays and a pension to retire on. It was Morris's hope of rest, and if not actually the hope of controlling one's product, at least some financial remuneration, that provided workers with some ability to support themselves and maybe a family, and to enjoy themselves in their time off the shop floor. This might be hard for some of us to imagine now, as we sneak in time to read between checking work emails or waiting on call for the next shift. And it's certainly not something to romanticize. Work was often both grinding and dull, and workers often too tired to enjoy their hard-won free time. But it allowed for a brief period of stability from the end of the Great Depression until the 1960s, nostalgia for which still haunts us today. Like most compromises, the Fordist bargain had left both sides vaguely unsatisfied, and it was held steady largely by repeated strikes from the workers on one side and repeated attempts by the bosses to unpick it on the other. But it was a deal that the ownership class had more or less gone along with when times were good and profits high enough that they didn't mind the sharing too much. It was less appealing when crisis struck in the 1970s. By the 1970s, the dynamism the system had displayed in the immediate post-war decades was exhausted, worn down by multiple political challenges and institutional sclerosis, explained economist James Midway. The solution to this problem, for capital, was to squeeze labor harder. Companies closed factories in high-wage countries and moved them to places where they could pay a fraction of the rates workers commanded in the United States or the United Kingdom. Working hours began to creep upward and incomes down. More families relied on 2 incomes, and with 2 working parents, no one had time to do the housework. By 2016, the United States had hemorrhaged enough industrial jobs that Donald Trump made them a focus of his pitch to make America great again. In 2017, after he became president, I went to Indianapolis to visit the Carrier plant. The factory, which had been slated to shut down in 2016, had been a campaign focal point for Trump's promise to bring good jobs back. When he won, he returned to Carrier to declare mission accomplished, telling the workers that he'd cut a deal to keep their plant open. But when I arrived, the Rexnord plant around the corner was closing. Those workers didn't get a visit from the president as their jobs disappeared, nor did the workers in Lordstown, Ohio, where the General Motors